Welcome to the France 24 debate. I'm Mark Owen in Paris. Eurovision has hit a bum note over the participation of Israel in this year's song contest. Demonstrations are planned in Vienna against the presence of Noam Bettan and his song Michelle. Now, he succeeded in getting through the semi-final 24 hours ago, but his appearance was greeted by chants of "Stop the Genocide." He could only resume singing after that had died down. 5 nations who usually take part in Eurovision have all pulled out in protest about Israel being there. And this includes the serial Eurovision winners, Ireland, record holders with 7 wins alongside Sweden. The Netherlands, Spain and Iceland are the others who are boycotting. So the question is, should politics and culture be kept separate? Is that even possible? Beyond that comes the question of whether or not one can criticise Israel or Zionism without then facing accusations of being anti-Semite or anti-Jewish. It's clear that many view Israel's military operation in Gaza and the West Bank as genocide. But should this mean a singer can't take part in the Eurovision showcase event? And we point out that Israel's war on Gaza is a reaction to the Hamas attack that killed at least 1,500 Israeli people, with 250 taken hostage and taken back to the Gaza Strip. That, of course, in October 2023. And that was clearly, indisputably, an atrocity. So, Eurovision is an escape from reality, but perhaps there are some realities that perhaps we cannot escape from. Here to discuss the issues we have, joining us from Aberdeen in Scotland, Dave Keating. Dave, you will know, is France 24's Brussels correspondent and a keen fan of Eurovision, as I know. David, great to see you. Always have pleasure having you on board.
Great to be here, Mark.
Joining us from Vienna in Austria, where the event is taking place, so this man is well placed, is Charlie Sohn, who is a freelance journalist. Again, someone who keeps a very keen eye on all matters Eurovision, and we're looking forward, Charlie, to hearing your assessment of the situation. Joining us here in the studio is our own Shirley Sitbon, who is, of course, France 24 journalist, someone who covers the news, all the issues, often covering issues from the Middle East, and obviously this one, of course, with Israel's participation being the real bone of contention. We'd be interested to hear what your take is and what you can bring to us from that other aspect of the story. Let's get into it then and bring in Dave Keating to start with first off. Dave, joining us, as I said, from Aberdeen in Scotland. Dave, this is really something that Eurovision could have done without in terms of the controversy. But some people say sometimes there's no publicity, there's no such thing as bad publicity, sorry. So is this somehow going to turn out in Eurovision's favour? I'm not quite sure of the situation. How do you see it?
I don't see how it could turn out in Eurovision's favor. I mean, this is, without exaggerating, this is the biggest crisis in Eurovision's 70-year history. And it's a long-running crisis now. It's been 3 years of the Israel issue dominating this contest. And I can tell you, among Eurovision superfans, of which I would include myself as one, there is a real depression about how much the contest has been politicized over the past 3 years. Now, we have, of course, this year, 5 countries not participating in Eurovision. The simple story is that 5 countries are boycotting Eurovision because Israel is in it. But it's really more nuanced than that. Because really, a lot of the unhappiness here is about Israel's Get Out the Vote campaign that's been happening over the past 3 years, driving the public vote in Israel's favor. Israel came second in the public vote in 2024 and first last year. And the New York Times had this explosive investigation, which they published earlier this week, finding the extent that the Israeli government was involved in this campaign, spending $1 million with direct messaging to people, telling them to vote 20 times for Israel, wherever they were located all over the world, outside Europe, which is possible now with the global voting. And it's left the impression that the Israeli government is telling people to vote for Israel to show their political support for Israel, therefore skewing the vote. According to the Times research, 1/3 of the public vote in Spain last year went to Israel. The next level down, for the next highest country, was Ukraine with 6%. So it's clear that whatever is happening here with the vote is the result of politically intentioned voting rather than people voting for the song they like the most. And that has really skewed the contest. It's upset a lot of fans. And I think I've noticed that with the fan community that did stick by the contest the last 2 years, this year really something seems to have broken.
Dave, for now, thank you very much indeed. Go to Vienna now to Charlie Sohn, the journalist with an eye on all Eurovision developments for us. Charlie, thanks for agreeing to be with us here on France 24. Really appreciate your presence. Really appreciate your time. I'm interested to know what you think about this whole development, because clearly, as Dave points out, this is a real body blow for Eurovision and something that really might perhaps harm its reputation going forward.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. But I completely agree with Dave as far as the fact that this is a major crisis for the organization. Also, just because, Eurovision was created in the aftermath of World War II, right? It's a cultural analog to, these post-war institutions that are, supposed to stand for a certain kind of internationalism, a certain kind of small L liberalism. And, Israel's war in Gaza has really called a lot of that into question and undercut sort of the credibility of the institution when it does things like, talk about everybody being united and advocates for peace. And I think that the other thing that's at hand here is this sort of like hypocrisy. Given that the organization expelled Russia in 2022 post invasion of Ukraine, I think that there are a lot of people who are looking at this as a double standard. And I think that you feel it on the ground. So all of this is just to completely support what Dave just said.
Charlie, any thoughts as to why Israel's been allowed to take part? Do you have a theory?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple of things. I think one, there is, one, I think that there are countries that have said that they will drop out if Israel is not allowed in the contest. Germany is one of them. Germany, obviously, because of the history with the Holocaust, is very sensitive about this issue. And Germany is one of the big 5 countries of Eurovision. So I think it's actually interesting. Eurovision has sort of found itself between a rock and a hard place, where if they exclude Israel from the coalition, there are a set of countries that will drop out. And if they don't, obviously there are a set of countries that have dropped out. So they're, I think, struggling to figure out a way forward, would be my impression.
Charlie, for now, thank you very much indeed. Charlie, I remind everybody, is in Vienna, where the event is taking place this year. It's underway. They had the semi-finals last night, and the Israeli entry, Noam Bettan, had to deliver his song called Michelle, which he succeeded in doing, and won his way through into the final, which takes place, I believe, on Saturday. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong. But in performing his song, he had to wait for chants of Stop the Genocide to die down. Now, wherever you are politically or wherever you are morally about the situation, that's one issue. The other issue is that here's someone who perhaps is having a break of their career and a chance to take part in something that is a wonderful event, and it is in some way tarnished by the situation. I know there are a number of arguments here, a number of ways to take it. Let's turn now to Shirley Sipon, who is our resident journalist, obviously, and you report extensively on the Middle East. You've got a real insight into Israeli politics, Israeli culture. How important is this event for Israelis? I'm wondering. Are people in Israel talking about this? Is it something that's making their headlines?
It is. It's very central. It has been for many years, but even more recently with the controversies. And actually, we're talking about what the Eurovision could have done, the organization. Well, they could have changed the rules entirely for the voting to kill that controversy over the massive voting. Because decades ago, there was no voting. Then you could vote, but not in such a scale. So they cut down from 20 to 10 votes. But the problem is still there. It's not as massive as last year. But still, they could have limited this more or said you can't vote for the same country several times, but you can vote for 10 different countries by your order of preference. They could have done that. Now, there's sort of a debate in Israel. Most people think that the criticism and the boycott is scandalous and that there's no reason and there's no that Israel has its place in this competition. Other people, including former winners of the Eurovision, Dana International and Noam Bettan, who actually sang with a Palestinian. They were two. In 2009, there was a song, There Must Be Another Way, and with Mira Awad, she was the Palestinian, Israeli as well. And so they criticized this. I mean, more Noam Bettan, who's a real peace activist, and she said, well, Israel maybe shouldn't have been kicked out, but should have not presented a candidate considering the situation, the war, the situation in Gaza, but also Israelis who are suffering from the situation. And Dana International, who is not, as far as I know, a peace activist, but still, she criticized, then she went back a little bit, but she said that Israel has this bad image because of its politics and it should take a step back and look at the situation. Then she also criticized those who are boycotting. So I think she got a lot of criticism from what she said in the first interview. But she probably was expecting it. That wasn't actually the national television, which is broadcasting the competition.
Okay, so that's the situation. There are a number of members of Eurovision who are going to boycott broadcasting the actual event, which again lends more to the fact of the state of protest against Israel's presence. Just staying with you, Shirley, the breakdown I'm kind of interested in knowing about of people who are for or against. Does it correspond with how they stand politically, whether they're pro-Netanyahu, for instance, or another way, whether they're pro-war or against? I mean, does that correspond?
Well, I think they're massively for an Israeli participation and against the expulsion, but even for the participation. The political use being done afterwards is something else, perhaps, because the fact that then Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, meets with the winner or with the Israeli candidate and says, yes, you did this for the country, and the big event they organize afterwards, all the tweets, all of the posting on social media, small press conference, large coverage on television, well, that's being criticized by many Israelis. But the participation, many people are saying, hey, we just want to keep living and we want to participate in a cultural event. But you know that there is actual meaning, a political meaning to the whole event and the way it's used afterwards.
Shirley, thank you. Israel does have a track record in winning this, as I know our guests could fill you in far more than I possibly could. Ireland is one of the countries that is choosing to boycott. Ireland has won Eurovision 7 times, so making it the record holder along with Sweden. And as well as Ireland, there are other countries choosing to boycott too, including the Netherlands and Iceland. Basically, the whole situation, it seems to be snowballing to, in a sense, protests planned in Vienna. Let's take a look at this report by Karis Garland.
With his performance of Michelle, Noam Bettan secured Israel a spot in the Eurovision final. But not everyone in the audience was impressed. In the fan zone, some turned their backs to the screen, while others brandished the Palestinian flag. Israel's participation in the contest has fans split.
Everyone is entitled to their own opinion on Israel. And if there are people who oppose Israel's participation, then it is their right to say so.
I think right now we should just focus on having fun and enjoying ourselves and just tune out everything else.
The controversy stems from Israel's war in Gaza following the October 7th attacks by Hamas. Before the semi-final on Tuesday, a few dozen pro-Palestinian activists placed mini coffins in central Vienna in protest.
We find it disgraceful that a state which has perpetrated genocide in Gaza for over 2 years is allowed to appear here completely unchallenged. The Austrian government and its media are doing everything in their power to brand this protest, every protest against Israel, as anti-Semitic.
In 2022, Russia was expelled from Eurovision after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. But the European Broadcasting Union refused calls to kick Israel out, spurring 5 countries to boycott the 70th anniversary edition. The absence of Spain, the Netherlands, Ireland, Slovenia and Iceland is a revenue and viewership blow to Eurovision and means that the number of participants at 35 is the lowest since 2003. However, organisers have addressed another Israel-related challenge this year by changing public voting rules. There are now regulations to discourage states and other third parties from disproportionate promotion campaigns following complaints about Israel's ability to mobilise votes in the last competition.
Karis Garland there with that report, a little insight into what's been going on in Vienna. Shirley filled me in on something that happened regarding the Israeli candidate Noam Bettan. What do you say? He's been told off himself? Can you fill us in?
Yes, the organization of the Eurovision filed a warned him because he violated the rules himself. Because, technically it has always been possible to vote several times. But of course, no one's supposed to do that. But many people who support Israel, many Jews, many people who support Israel have been doing that. And that's cheating the vote. So the Eurovision organization, they had a whole, they communicated on the fact that that's fraud. Even if it's technically possible, you don't do that. And they said nobody should campaign to do that. No country should call to vote for their candidate several times. And he himself, the singer, apparently was warned because he was filmed in 5 different languages campaigning for people to vote for him 10 times. So that's what I read earlier. So yes, he got a warning himself about this because it goes against the regulation.
Well, my first observation is I'm very impressed that he could say all that in 5 languages, which is no mean feat, is it? Let's bring in Dave, who's in Aberdeen. Dave Keating, our Brussels correspondent normally. Joining us from Scotland. He gets around, which is nice. Dave, I hope you're having a great time in Scotland. It is a lovely place to be, and Aberdeen is brilliant and bracing at any time of year, so I hope you're enjoying that as well. In terms of Eurovision, in terms of what this means in terms of prestige, because some might say, well, it doesn't really matter, does it, if one person enters and the country they're from is involved in any kind of war or issue which is questioning human rights or any kind of issue like that. But isn't there also this idea that if someone enters, say, from Israel's government can make a kind of soft power coup out of this and really gain advantage if the Israeli singer goes on and wins?
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, you can see why people would think that it's the 5 countries that have pulled out that are politicizing the contest, if they see Israel as really the victim here in this situation. But really, if you're looking at the way that the Israeli government has instrumentalized Eurovision, it's really Israel that's politicizing the contest. And I've heard that complaint from a lot of Israelis. You were talking before about how the Israeli public views this. It's true that every Israeli I've talked to thinks that they should be in Eurovision, but a lot of them are angry at the way that the Netanyahu government has ostentatiously tried to instrumentalize the contest. Basically, you pay for all this marketing to tell people to vote in order to show their political support for Israel. And then once Israel comes first in the vote ranking, we see Israeli media citing that placement as evidence that there is a silent majority supporting Israel and supporting their actions in Gaza. And it's almost trying to turn Eurovision into a referendum on Israel or on the situation in Gaza and now also Lebanon. But it obviously can't be a referendum, not only because this is supposed to be a music contest, but also if you have everyone supporting Israel voting for one country and everyone not supporting Israel voting for 37 other countries, that's not that no way can be seen as a referendum of public support. So really, if you look at the behavior of Israel over the past 3 years, that's what's really frustrated these 5 countries. And we should point out, they did participate alongside Israel over the past 2 years, even though they had a lot of reservations about doing so. What boiled over last year is that the European Broadcasting Union, which organizes the contest, refused to change the rules in any meaningful way. Even this recommendation that countries don't urge people to vote the maximum of 10 times is only a recommendation, actually. I mean, this change to the rules was really a lot of fans felt that it was really quite weak because it didn't actually stop the multiple voting, didn't really put firm rules down about these politically motivated marketing campaigns. And really, that's why the frustration boiled over last year with these 5 countries. We should point out, Eurovision is a hugely watched thing. It's the biggest tool of soft power that Europe produces as a whole. It normally has more viewers than the Super Bowl, the Oscars, and the Grammys combined. But that viewership already started falling after they kicked Russia out, and I expect that this year we're going to have a record low if you're looking at the past 2 decades for Eurovision viewership.
Those figures you've just quoted there, Dave, are absolutely phenomenal. I expect those figures figure in your Substack piece you've done about why you're not watching Eurovision. We can maybe put that on screen so people, if they want to follow that up and give it a read, I recommend that they do, because it's a really good piece. Dave, of course, putting that pen to paper. Do people do that anymore? No, on the keyboard, writing this thing for Substack. In terms of what Eurovision means, Dave, I mean, clearly it's a massive event, as you say. I know when it was relocated because of the Ukraine war to Liverpool, where I come from, members of my family said it basically made the city come alive hugely for a week. And Liverpool is a very vibrant place, but Eurovision was something that really sort of got into the groove there and people really got into it. There's a massive amount of fun about it. It just seems such a shame that it's been undercut in any way.
Yeah, I remember, Mark, you and I talked when I was there in person covering Eurovision back when it was in Liverpool. It is normally a very joyous event. That Liverpool contest was the last one before this Israeli contest exploded, because it's the first one. It was the last one before the October 7th attacks. And it was really the last innocent Eurovision, you could say. Since then, the contest has been in Malmo, in Basel, in Switzerland, and now in Vienna. And there's this huge cloud hanging over it because of the Israel controversy. And when you talk to fans, I mean, I haven't been there since Liverpool. It's the last contest I attended. But the people I know who have gone these past 3 years just say the environment is so depressing. It's nothing like it used to be. The controversy has really sucked the joy out of the contest. You know, for my part, journalist Dave is still keeping an eye on Eurovision and covering it, but fan Dave is not watching it. I didn't watch it last night. You know, really, if we're looking at a situation where we're going to have this kind of preordained result every year where we know that political support is going to drive this massive public vote, what's the point of watching? What's the fun in it? And I know a lot of other fans feel the same way.
Dave, for now, thank you very much indeed. We're going to bring in Charlie, who's in Vienna. Charlie Sohn, who is a freelance journalist who keeps more than one eye on Eurovision. Charlie, great to have you with us. Dave explaining there about how things used to be. And in a sense, and the pun is intended, is Eurovision meeting its own Waterloo? I'm thinking back to the days when, say, ABBA came to the fore with that song Waterloo when they won back in the early 70s and created a massive, mega career, which is still going on, isn't it? You know, ABBA's influence is absolutely massive. There have been so many other artists who come through Eurovision because of the joy of the event and the joy of performing and making people happy. It seems really sad that this situation right now has arisen. Are we at a point where, do you think, the Eurovision is at its Waterloo, and is it an issue about culture and politics being inextricably bound?
Yeah, well, and this is where I think the political versus apolitical framing is maybe oversimplifying a little bit, because and 2023 in Liverpool is kind of instructive, right? You know, that show was hosted by the BBC in sort of support of Ukraine, which had won the year before. The entire show was infused with this, you know, these interval acts that supported Ukraine in the war and very much acknowledged the reality. So I wouldn't say that Eurovision has been apolitical. What it has been at its best is it has been representative of a certain idea. And it is that sort of post-World War II idea that Europe can come together under these sort of fundamental values. And, you know, to speak to sort of Dave's point, it's like Eurovision's low points have been, you know, in 1969, Franco's Spain hosted Eurovision, right? And that basically gave Franco a commercial on television for free to whitewash his regime. In 2012, Azerbaijan sort of had a similar opportunity. And I think the thing that really pushed things over the edge last year was simply that Israel came in second, and everyone had to face the possibility not just of Israel's participation, but the idea that post October 7th, post Gaza invasion, the Eurovision brand and the Eurovision idea would be tied to a regime that at this point, I think it's fair to say is pretty much a nationalist regime that stands opposed, I think, to the sort of post-war order in so many ways. I mean, Netanyahu even gave a speech recently saying that Israel would have to be Sparta, right? Which is saying that Israel views itself now as not part of this sort of, I guess, European idea and more on its own, which actually stands against, kind of the attitude that Israel had towards the contest, since it started participating in 1973. Obviously, this is a change that, the 20 years of the Netanyahu government has brought about.
Charlie, thank you. We're going to get some music because it would be a shame to do a program like this about Eurovision and not hear some singing. So let's take a listen to, from 2009, an Israeli artist, Noah, singing with a Palestinian artist. Have a listen to that, then after that we will hear from Noah.
I think art should always be allowed to express freely a voice, an opinion. Artists come as themselves. They don't come speaking in the voice of governments. Governments come and go, countries remain. And I'm, again, always against cultural boycotts. Having said that, I think that my own country, if it were up to me, should have sat this one out in order to express solidarity with the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people suffering in Israel and in Palestine, our neighbors. This is not a time, in my opinion, to be on this specific stage with sequins and feathers.
Very strong words from Noah, who spoke on France 24 a little earlier. Shirley Sipon will give us the backstory regarding the song we heard.
Yes, often in the Eurovision in general, there are several languages, and in that specific song, they sang in Arabic, in Hebrew, and in English, as we've heard. And a few days ago, Noah, whose real name is Noam Bettan, took part with Dana International in an event for peace. So that was just a few days ago. So I think there was also a symbol there.
Seems like a really wonderful person, and the words she was giving us there clearly showing that there is a real sense among some people that perhaps Israel should not be there. Shirley, thanks for the explanation. Let's go back to Charlie, who's in Vienna. Charlie, what do you make of what Noah was saying there, that Israel should have really sat it out?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that, Noah and Mira's song was one of those moments where, Eurovision's political nature was at its best, right? It was a call for peace at a time when there wasn't peace. And it was a kind of utopian vision of what the world could be. I mean, you have this history of Eurovision going back to, Fernando Tordo, who was a Portuguese singer who, took a song that was against the Estado Novo regime, which was in power at the time, to Eurovision to protest an authoritarian government. So there's this history. I mean, 2016, right after the invasion of Crimea, 2 years after, Jamala sings a song about her great-grandmother who was driven out of Crimea by Stalin. So I think that there is a potential for a certain kind of politics in Eurovision, but fundamentally, it requires every country that participates to agree on certain fundamental values, and those values involve democracy and human rights and a certain, internationalism and an openness to, counting yourself among nations.
Indeed, open question to all three of you, because I'm more interested in what you've got to say than what I've got to say. Am I right in saying that if a song is overtly political or appears to have some kind of message like that, it does less well than a good old-fashioned song that's about love and relationships and having your heart broken. David, over to you
I
first.
could take that. It's actually against the rules to have a political message in the song. And that actually relates to what you were asking about whether Israel should have sat this year out or sat 2024 out. Actually, the Israeli broadcaster Khan was going to sit 2024 out, but the Israeli President Herzog, intervened and basically put political pressure on them to be in Eurovision. They first fielded a song that had pretty clearly within the lyrics some references to October 7th. The EBU said, you need to change those lyrics. They've said that to a lot of countries in the past. It's happened several times when countries, when the lyrics were deemed to be political. And Khan's response was, no, if we have to change the lyrics, we'd rather just not be in the contest. There's a lot of people who think that was kind of an orchestrated move so that they could find a way to not be in the contest that year because they knew that their participation would prove to be such a distraction. But then the political pressure from the government meant that they did end up changing the lyrics and participated. But it is part of the rules that politics is not supposed to have a place in Eurovision. There's a notorious example where Georgia, right after Russia invaded, they fielded a Eurovision song called We Don't Want to Put In, which of course makes no sense in English, and it was clearly we don't want Putin. And so the EBU said, no, that doesn't make sense in English. You clearly mean Vladimir Putin. You can't have that lyric. And so Georgia said, okay, then we're not participating. And they didn't participate. Khan was going to do the same thing in 2024, but political pressure meant they did. And I really think we'd be in a very different situation right now if Israel had sat out voluntarily from the 2024 contest and then come back in 2025 more quietly than the government has actually done. I don't think we would have gotten to this point of controversy. Obviously, this could have been a lot better handled both by the Israeli broadcaster and by the EBU.
David, thank you. Charlie, same reflection to you. The songs that what people remember are the songs about love, relationships, broken hearts, those kind of things. That's really the strength of Eurovision, is it not?
And I have a slightly different opinion than Dave on this. The apolitical rule has been applied completely inconsistently over the course of Eurovision. Like I said, Jamala sang a song about Russia invading Crimea and won the contest with it. Krista Siegfried sang this song "Marry Me" at a time that was staged as a gay love song at a time when a gay marriage song at a time when gay marriage was illegal. I think it throughout most of Europe. So I think, going back to Walter Andreas Schwartz, who performed at the first Eurovision, he was representing Germany and sang a song about how they weren't dealing with the Holocaust properly. So to me, my love of Eurovision actually comes from the fact that it's different than what you would hear on the radio, because necessarily when you are standing on stage representing a country and you are singing in a contest of countries, it's kind of hard to, I love a love song, but I think it would really damage the artistic side of Eurovision to limit it to, as Noah said, the sequins and the feathers,
Indeed. I'm thinking, in my mind, of course, I can still see ABBA back in the early 70s belting out Waterloo and sort of having this sort of glitz, glam rock effect going on and then creating everything from there as it went on. I'm thinking back of other singers like the likes of, say, Johnny Logan from Ireland, who had a beautiful ballad, What's Another Year, massive hit after that, and again created a great career. Many other artists, of course, have replicated that kind of success, though not on the same scale. I'm thinking about the fact that there might be an alternative event being held, and we can maybe show you a little flyer which is advertising that. It's happening in Brussels. The idea to create some kind of a separate sort of event. Perhaps we can show that to you right now. Brussels holding United Palestine concert as Eurovision alternative. Shirley, any thoughts on that one?
I have several thoughts from what we have been saying.
Well, go ahead.
I think that politics have always, not as massively as today, not in such a major way, but they've always been a part of Eurovision. The voting among countries, often countries voted for their neighbors, for their allies, and France has often complained about this, saying that that's the reason they haven't won since 1976, I think. Also, booing the Israeli candidate is not really new. It didn't make as much noise, but it was. And in 2002, Sarit Haddad was booed throughout her song, which at the time was not politicized, and nobody, it wasn't the same government, and it wasn't used in the same way as today. And something else also that perhaps is really different with since the war in Gaza, since October 7th, the way that the Israeli government is using this, it's really using the Eurovision, asking it to mute boos, asking to show people hailing Israel, basically forcing this campaign, forcing the fact that people can vote several times. And they're taking the Eurovision contest as a hostage in a way. They're really using it, and the Eurovision hasn't been able to find a solution yet, although there are solutions out there, so they should try something out.
It is an entertainment event, isn't it? And entertainment events can be manipulated and staged in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying this is kind of a bad thing that they're doing or a good thing, but it happens with entertainment. That's what entertainment is. Now, of course, if it's news coverage or a documentary, that's different, and you can't do that with news or documentaries. So it is an interesting concept. But I think the size of Eurovision, as you're pointing out, creates a platform which goes beyond just entertainment, doesn't it? That's the thing.
Yes, and it's very uneasy, all the situation.
Indeed. I need to stop you there because Charlie wanted to comment about the Brussels event. Charlie, back to you. Charlie in Vienna.
Well, it was just...
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it was just interesting because... you mentioned ABBA. The last time that there was an alternative to Eurovision, a kind of protest alternative, was the year after ABBA won. There was this thing in Sweden hosted called Alternative Festivalen, because the Swedes were so upset that their public broadcaster spent government money, promoting this sort of cheesy, in their minds, flashy, empty calorie music. So, it's interesting because there is a way in which no matter what the institution does and what the institution becomes, everyone has their own angle on it. And so, now I think we're seeing the other side of that coin.
Okay, so there we go. David, if you were in Brussels, would you be attending the alternative event?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame I'm not in Brussels like I usually am. There is a big group of people now that are big Eurovision fans and feel like they have nowhere to go at the moment, right? And, looming in the back of this, I should bring up, is Intervision, the Russian rival that was relaunched last year. So Intervision was the Cold War alternative to Eurovision back during the Cold War. It was always in Sopot, Poland, and it was for the Warsaw Pact countries. It wasn't a huge success, but Vladimir Putin has revived it after Russia was kicked out of Eurovision in 2022. The first one happened last year, and the next one's going to happen in Saudi Arabia. Now, it didn't get big ratings when it was held last year, but it's kind of looming there in the background as a potential competitor to Eurovision, and it's coming in without these trappings of harmony, peace, and unity that Charlie was talking about. It's kind of a nakedly, let's say, a song contest for the new world order where might makes right, and you have all these countries participating like Saudi Arabia, like Russia, with not exactly sterling reputations, right? So, if you talk to the broadcasters now, they say, no, we're not worried about Intervision. But I think they're starting to get worried because, let's see what the ratings are on Saturday night. Maybe they hold the same. Maybe the 5 countries pulling out won't give as much of a dent as I'm expecting. But, Intervision could really step in here to give people an alternative. And that's a little dangerous considering who started Intervision, which is Vladimir Putin.
Dave, thank you very much indeed. Shirley, is it likely that all this fuss, all this controversy is likely to have any impact at all on Israel, on Benjamin Netanyahu, on the policies of his administration?
No. In any case, he'll spin this, whatever happens, boycott, no boycott, he'll find a way to use it to push forward, and no matter what, he wants, it will absolutely not change his policies. If Israel is boycotted, he'll say it's scandalous, it's anti-Semitism, it's horrible. Well, unite with me, be with me. I'm your protector. And if people stop boycotting, if it's a great success, he'll say, oh, you see, it's a great success. It's wonderful. Everyone's with us. So you should trust me. Stay with me. I will be your leader. So yes, any way it goes, he'll find a way to spin it. It has always been that way.
And can you tell us anything about the artist in question, Noam Bettan? His stance, his style, his thoughts. Is there anything on record?
Well, no, I don't know his stance. I think that somebody who's a pacifist wouldn't have participated in these recent years in such a contest. And he hasn't said anything. He's not participating with a song for peace. You know, he wouldn't have been selected, perhaps. So yeah, but at least this year it's a song that tries to move away from politics. It's some kind of toxic love song, but so he's not. It's not like the two previous years when it was really about Israel surviving a fight for unity, something that's very nationalist. And now it's really something that's trying to get back into the Eurovision spirit in a way. And I felt that he was singing pretty loudly to be louder than all the boos that we were hearing. But this time they weren't muted like last year, from what I could understand. But we didn't see the flags, the Palestinian flags on camera. We saw the Israeli ones, from what I saw.
Chanting "Stop the Genocide," that went on, of course, but before he actually started singing, he had to die down before he could actually take to the mic, which again gives you a different sense and a very different feeling from the clip that we showed of Noah and the Palestinian artist singing in 2009. Those days must seem, for you, for everyone watching, incredibly far away and incredibly remote, and perhaps the type of days that could never return.
Well, let's hope they will. But there was even a year when a group of Israelis, not extremely talented and perhaps drunk, but they in the end they hid Syrian and Israeli flags, and they were told they violated the rules because they had flags. But in fact, it was a message for peace between Israel and Syria. But yeah, so those were definitely different times.
Okay, Shirley, thank you very much indeed. I think we've reached the end of our debate, sadly. We didn't even get to ask all of our panel which was their favourite Eurovision song, so maybe that's something that might emerge in time to come. Shirley Slippon, thank you very much indeed. Dave in Aberdeen, Dave Keating, our Brussels correspondent up there in Scotland. It's his story and he's sticking to it. Thank you, sir, for being with us. And thank you to Charlie Sohn, who is a freelance journalist joining us from Vienna, where Eurovision is taking place. Thank you. And thanks to you all for watching. Stay with us here on France 24.